So I think like the free market will also solve it in a way that the more educators we have, the more competition of ideas we have. And if somebody is going in a weird direction, we will not be afraid to call each other out in this sense.
Lugano's Plan B podcast presents 3-ingredient recipe, open source, educate, orange peel, with Dusan Matuska, Rogzy, and Mir.
Okay, so my name is Dusan. I'm a Bitcoin educator for 8 years, and currently we are running a Bitcoin center in Honduras and financing our education activities around the world with mining in Paraguay and Ethiopia. So our mission is to orange peel 100 million people in upcoming years.
I am Mir, and somebody has called me the godmother of the Italian community, and I think it's a very nice definition because I love to stay around people and to orange peel them since quite time, especially in Italy, and I'm still do that to the best I can. And nowadays I'm very close to help a very cool initiative called Plan B Network.
My name is Rogzy. I'm the co-founder of Plan B Network. I've been educating around Bitcoin for the past 8 years, and Plan B Network and what we're trying to do is to bring scalable Bitcoin education to the masses, so bring the tools and the classes for mass adoption through orange peeling and education.
Would you guys prioritize open source sovereignty or user-friendly accessibility when educating a global audience?
I think it's a journey, and so you want to start easily, and I strongly believe that when you're educating someone, you want to connect with the person you have in front, so understand in which way you can enter. The entry point for everybody is very different. The style of communication we react to is very different. So at the beginning, if you are too much about open source, everything, privacy, and those tools can really be scary, because not because of the topics, but because you can put another barrier. So in my experience, there are plenty of barriers. One is trivial, is the linguistic barrier. Another one is the technological barriers, and some barriers are just like yes, too much information, even if it's good, but you want to make things easier at the beginning and then guide to be as much as possible a guide and go through the goal. And the goal will be, of course, open source knowledge and open source tools, but it takes a lot of time.
Rogzy?
No, I completely agree. We also often need to consider the amount of time we have to educate someone. So you will not tell the same advice, the same tools to be used if you have like 1 hour in a bar during a Bitcoin meetup, or if you can do like a whole day seminars or even a week like you are doing, Dusan. And so if it's really short, sometimes installing the first wallet, even if it's not necessarily open source, could lead to a way easier functioning, like way to explain. The person will get a wallet, receive Bitcoin, he will immediately see the result, and so he will say, okay, this is transformative technology, so I can send that money that fast to anywhere in the world. And the answer is yes, because it's like a network. Now there's always a caveat on the difficulty of the technology, but that comes later. So if you only have 1 hour, go for the easy solution and try to make a good impression of the technology. If you have 1 day, 1 week, then obviously you go through the nuance to explain that it's not actually that easy and that Bitcoiners need to make an effort to regain their sovereignty, because you cannot just clap your hand and exit the financial system. It's a journey, like you mentioned, and there will be many steps and improvement that's going to take years of studying and improvement.
I totally agree with what you said, guys, because there needs to be a balance between both, and you need to know the context, the people, the target group that you're educating. So we try to empower educators, just like you do, guys. And then I believe that educators will figure their own way of educating, and they will pick up from the whole palette of tools what works for them and for their target groups. It's a different approach that I use in Slovakia, Czech Republic, and then in Honduras, because the people are coming from a different context. They have different problems, so you cannot just use one thing for everybody. And I really believe like people should kind of pick from the palette and use whatever works for them and for the contexts.
Yeah, exactly. And when we go to the specific of regional, basically, way to teach Bitcoin, it gets immediately very complex, because you cannot find you cannot always find high quality education in every language. even if there's a really talented YouTuber or podcaster, he cannot cover all the topics, and the privacy one could be maybe too difficult technically. The tools and software available are not going to be the same. So it's really one of the challenges we have at Planby Network to try to figure out how to bring that to every single country in a smart way. So they don't even see the frustration of not having the tools because they see the best tool for their country and their use case.
What I also see sometimes in education platforms, like they give you everything and just like you pick up. But sometimes I think for the newbies it's difficult because they want somebody to tell them, start with this, then go here, and kind of to create a little path for them. And then in the end they will choose, okay, maybe I switch a different path. But if you give them the whole palette and they're very lost in that. So I think there's a little bit of, maybe we can call it centralization or like showing the path for them. Because if you just give them like, go freely on the internet and explore, they're going to be like, okay, where should I start? So we should give them a little bit of leading in a way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also I gave a talk here for the Italian stage, and I said a thing that I want to say it again. It's not you, it's Bitcoin. If you're not understanding, if you're struggling with Bitcoin, it's because Bitcoin is complex. It's a complex creature, dynamic, changing over time and continuously. So I think it's our responsibility as educators to make the people feel that it's completely part of the journey to struggle, and this is going to take years. It took us and still takes a lot of effort being updated and continuing on to this journey. So I think it's important to remember that there's nothing wrong with you. It's Bitcoin, it's complex, it's complicated, don't worry.
Yeah. It's just like life, like you don't get the manual when you're born, like, oh, this is how to live. You need to struggle and you build your courage and everything through struggle, right? So I think it's the same with Bitcoin, as you said.
And so, for example, what I do when I have more time, and it's not just, okay, get a wallet, this is Bitcoin, is that my first class is I'm a prerequisite to Bitcoin, fraud and financial scam, online security, advice for beginners. So I'm like, okay, we will learn about Bitcoin because we have a lot of times, but let's focus on what you should know before starting that journey, right? All the scams that can be around, how to not lose your money, because Bitcoin is a new it's a new prototype of money, so there's like rules that you need to follow or you will lose money. And because money is a sensitive topic, people get really attached to it, which is normal. It's their time and energy that have been like harvested for quite some things. And so telling them, okay, it's gonna be slow, but you're gonna get it at some point, and do not make a mistake. Like, we're gonna try to help you not make a mistake is always something I feel like the students really like it, to be like hands taken and carried into a safe path.
Also, you touched on a very important point. Of course, you want to be empathetic and guide them. At the same time, you want them not to get involved into scams. So you have also be very strict about the scams and the possibility of finding those types of other projects or tokens, whatever. And so in that part, being more empathetic and to show them that it's completely wrong and they can get wrecked.
What I use in this sense is like I'm trying to speak why I have only Bitcoin and nothing else, and not like what they should do, because my experience is that people are more inspired and motivated if you tell your story and your experience instead of telling them how to live. So when somebody tells me, hey, should I buy this or that, I'm like, you choose what to do with your own money. This is why I chose Bitcoin, and these are the reasons and all of it. And my experience is that people are much more motivated, like, okay, that makes sense. So if they align with your values, they're much more willing to go into Bitcoin only.
And one of the challenges I see for Bitcoin education is that we want to kind of decentralize it still. So we want hundreds, if not millions, of Bitcoin teachers around the world, so they can have like the personal contact and really like get with the students and get a personal parcours. But the trick is, how can we make sure, because we shouldn't trust, we need to verify, but the new person joining the industry will never verify at first. They will trust that mentor, that new Bitcoin educator. And so I see like we do have an important role to make sure that the educators of the next generation of Bitcoiners can be trusted, or at least like have some proof of work and they know what they're doing, and we can basically like say, yes, go see those persons, they will be able to educate you. And I think that's what you are doing with training the educators, making sure those persons have the qualification and the kind of social trust that is needed to then take on the journey to educate others, right?
Yeah, totally. And this is actually what inspired me to create a program of Bitcoin Educator Academy, because I met a lot of people who are amazing educators or amazing Bitcoiners. They understand the tech. When they start to teach it, they throw at you everything at the same time. It's like drinking from the fire hose. It's impossible, right? So kind of teaching the soft skills of how to how to handle the objections, how to use analogies, how to debunk the myths. It's super important, and kind of like to really know what to say at what time and not to throw everything at the same time. That's kind of like the tricky part of being an educator. And that's what I feel like we need to teach more to the people, the soft skills of education.
I have a question.
Absolutely. I think the best compliment I got from educated someone was this guy coming after a meetup or whatever. I don't remember. He told me, I'm going to bring my wife to you because you look like a normal person.
Nah.
So it really surprised me, but it was very nice. I mean, I didn't scare them.
Yeah.
We felt a connection. He was motivated to expand the knowledge to Bitcoin to his family. And it really made me think about this, because we tend to be the educators, so we want to show our authority, but in the end it's not that something that is going to work so deeply. Sometimes to see that I'm a normal person using Bitcoin and talking about Bitcoin can even be more effective, and that really surprised me.
And I love that you mentioned empathy as well. It's super important in education. That's wonderful.
We are talking about technology, of course, and very abstract and very cold topics, but at the same time, we are humans, and of course, we have the same fears, and we are talking about money and value, and so of course, there are plenty of emotions going on. Also, the reaction we get from people is they are trying to protect themselves from what they have done in the past. I didn't buy Bitcoin, it's time to enter, it's a good investment for my family. So of course you're educating people, but it's not completely not related to everything as humans, so everything going on in our life. We have to remind also that part, even if we are not, it's not our strong skill, I think as educator we have to develop this part too. Is super, super important.
Super agree.
How can we share Bitcoin information without adding any personal bias?
So that's a big challenge, because at the end we could censor some specific solution, we could incentivize people to do more one or the other, and we could be coerced. The good thing is that it's not just one solution. Everyone can educate a different way, and there's a lot of educators and different initiatives around the world. So there's no monopoly on Bitcoin education. At Plan B, we do try to have the biggest database of accurate, monitored, high-quality data, but it's fully open source. Anyone can contribute, anyone can fork, anyone can take it. And then basically it's just a question of you just have a library of content and you decide which one to pick. And if you feel like, okay, there is not that specific content, you can just add it. So on that side, it's basically trying to empower the educators and give them the tools to better educate. Having a complete cohesion of all the educators around the world is going to be impossible, because Bitcoin is very emotional and everyone has a different way to explain it and a different vision of what it is. Some people are going to say it's only privacy, and if you're not running your node and everything, you are doing it wrong. Other people are going to be way more tolerant. So basically, I think at that stage, lucky for Bitcoin, it is already too late to try to narrow it down to one path of learning. We may optimize it because we believe that it's the easiest way to explain. First we explain maybe money, then the technology, then the practice. But even there, every educator has a different way to do it. And based on the person, the time you have, it's going to be different. So I understand the scare. I understand people could be scared that we try to centralize education. But at the same time, everything is open source, and we're just building tools for educators to use. We're not telling them exactly what to do, and if they want to do something else, they're completely free to do so.
I think it's there is the concept of curation, which is a nice word. I mean, centralization can be really scary. Echo chamber, we are recycling the same content in the same community all over again, but it's almost impossible, especially at this stage. But if we think about that as curation, I mean, I created this list of Italian resources, and for me, it was just like my favorite resources, and I wanted to share with the community, and it was just like a curation, my favorite and the best ones, and the Italian were happy because they had this sort of a list where they would have a start. Also, I put every type of media, different media, even the ones I don't usually consume, to get a more diversified the list. And nowadays the list is so long, it's pretty useless, which makes me really happy because it means we have so many great content in Italian. But I started just from my favorite things. I didn't want to impose those things to others. So I think that from time to time it's difficult to find a balance between centralization, decentralization, and what is being done by Plan B Network is amazing because they are centralizing, curating the contents, but at the same time trying to tell people, please decentralize this knowledge in your community, in your personal journey. So that's a very good balance. And it's not easy, absolutely. Your question was really, really good.
Yeah, what the first slogan we tried to guide was that centralize to better distribute. So we just gather, we curate, we translate in every language, so it's available. We do the hard, like the educator is doing a really hard work, but then translating, created, and giving it to more people, so his work is more distributed, is extremely valuable for countries that just don't have Bitcoin educators. Now, to go in your way, I think every educator, and especially influencers, big podcaster, big YouTuber, have a massive responsibility to be not necessarily transparent, but to understand the wave they will have on the next potential soft fork, hard fork of Bitcoin, and the direction the protocol and the entire space is going to take. Because at the end, it's a social movement, but we always, like most people don't have time to spend all of their energy and they have a full-time job. So they rely on a podcast and a YouTuber to tell them how is Bitcoin doing and where it's going. So those big influencers will need to take responsibility at some point, saying, do we fork, do we do not fork? Exactly like during the block size war, like high-profile person made, in a way, a change in the protocol by having one decision or another. And this time, podcaster will have an important role. And I always stress when I see them that you need to realize that, and you need to be straightforward with your audience that they will need to make their own decision, and there will be a lot of influence going on. And in the age of fake news, big data, and algorithm, the next, I call it the Bitcoin Civil War 2, that's going to come at some point. Educators will have a massive role to play. And the more educators, the better distributed the information, the better. So Bitcoin can be more resilient to an attack from whoever is going to be the bad guy in the next war to come.
What I love also is that I love Bitcoiners because they are not afraid to call each other out on things. And this is kind of also the part of Bitcoin mindset, is that to be really careful about what others do and like don't be afraid to call them out. So I think like the free market will also solve it in a way that the more educators we have, the more competition of ideas we have. And if somebody is going in a weird direction, we will not be afraid to call each other out in this sense, right? So as a market, we'll kind of find a balance of which sources are the good ones, who's doing the good thing. And when you said the word curated, you reminded me of one analogy. Like imagine we go to an orchestra, right? We're going to listen to a symphony. If we would be, as an audience, required to pick the sounds, or every instrument would play at the same time, it would be horrible. So we kind of rely on the curation of the orchestra to make a beautiful song that we enjoy. If we don't like it, we can take the notes and redo it and sing it ourselves, or play it ourselves. But we go there, we listen to the curation of the sounds, have a beautiful symphony. And that's, I think, the role of Plan B Network as well. Like you curate like the best based on what you think is the best. If anybody doesn't like it, they can fork it, they can do anything else. But we kind of, and people, newbies from my experience, they want somebody that they can trust to like, this is the way. And if they, on the journey, realize it's not a good way, then they will call the person out, and the person will go off the market of education in a sense.
Yeah. Also, a very hard thing with Bitcoin education is that the rabbit hole is thought to be infinite. And basically, the more you go in it, the more you want in-depth content, the more you're going to go into a specific path. You're going to focus more on mining, then you want to contribute in the development of maybe code, then you focus on Lightning, peer-to-peer, Nostr, whatever. And so a Bitcoiner is always searching for new knowledge. And once he spends like the first 100 hours, 200 hours on the basics of Bitcoin, he will want more. And at that point, basically, his mentor in the Bitcoin space is going to change. It's going to go from Andreas, for me, to Preston Page, to Gary Swan, to Giacomo, to someone else. And so his point of view is also going to change based on those mentors. And the more he's going to dive into a topic, the more he's going to question, for example, what he's learned, or affirm that what he learned was right. And so there's so many paths that so many people have different point of view that it creates a resiliency in what is Bitcoin. And we get really good debate here at Lugano on covenants and an ossification of the Bitcoin protocol. And everyone has a say. And everyone who says something has hundreds, if not thousands of hours and 10 years working in industry, and still they do not agree. And that is beautiful for
Which is
Bitcoin.
great. Totally agree.
What advice would you give to people who want to become Bitcoin educators?
I would say that don't just focus on the technicals, focus on the delivery. Focus on being empathetic, as we already mentioned, and the soft skills of delivery. Kind of be very careful about knowing the person, knowing the context, knowing the level of their knowledge, and really show them that it's not a difficult path to go. They just need to be consistent. That even you're not in the end of the journey yet as an educator. We have so much to learn still, and that the journey continues, but you don't need to be afraid to explore the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I would say that you are not alone. I think that's something people often believe. You are not alone. You are not the sole educator. There's a lot of resources available online. There's a lot of ready-to-teach courses. You don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't need to redo Bitcoin 101 PowerPoint. They already exist in many different formats in open source, so you can just take curriculum that have been tested. And even there's communities of educators. You should join some Telegram group with a lot of educators. You should like do seminars with Dusan. So just consider that if you want to start, it's really good. You may be alone in your city teaching in your local town, but at the global scale, there is a big network of educators that tries to get better organized, that try to get better at distributing tools. We try to do that at Plan B2. You are doing it in your way. And so just join those communities of educators, contribute at a higher scale, and share what you are doing to the rest of the community. If you create a course, share it around. Maybe someone else will say, that course is really good. I'm going to take it and teach it too. And this way, we're going to move forward into the Bitcoin educational layer, let's say.
I would say don't focus on any KPIs. It's impossible. You don't focus on numbers or people that you orange spilled because of you or whatever. Because from time to time, people they get orange pilled maybe because they choose to be orange pilled in their time, and after years they will come back. And so focus on getting better and learn again, getting great resources, going to courses for Bitcoin educators, getting better, and don't focus on the number of people you want to get involved. They are going to arrive at their own time if they wanted to. It's a struggle, is something it took me some time to understand that I have to do what I do with education, not caring about the relation between my efforts and the results. I don't care about the results. I think in a way it's better if my contents reach one person but deeply than reaching so many people shallowly. I don't care about that anymore. So keep being better for yourself, and the result eventually will come.